Well, good morning, everybody. Once again, I'm not working from a script or anything like that, but I have a number of things I'd like to discuss, and I welcome civil and polite responses, not abuse and what have you. There's so many things that I'd like to just try and get into this little video, this discussion. Sort of an ongoing thing here with, well, my own brother Chris. I welcome this. We have an interesting time. We all always have a great conversation on the phone. So let's get into this. Now, right away, I would start off this little talk, let's say, with something that would almost always all agree on, and that is that the world is round and not flat. Now, there are a few people out there that have videos saying they can show why the world is flat. I don't want to spend too much time on that, and I'm sure you'd appreciate it. But I'd say this, as my friend John Edwards pointed out, and I'll send him a copy of this, but maybe not, because he asked me not to send him anything to do with aliens. So he may see it secondhand. If you go down to a port and you watch a ship going out, it takes quite a while, but anyway, if you lay down, in other words, you get a nice banana lounge and a pillow, just visualise that. You lay down, you watch the ship disappearing, right? Ship's gone. You stand up, and you can see the ship again. Why? Because that's the curvature of the earth. It's going around the world. Now, these flat earthers will think, all sorts of things. They make all sorts of comments. And I've actually seen some of it. Well, there's so many things to show that, sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Now, if the earth was flat, the sun would have to orbit the earth for it to rise and set around this flat slab. Now, we know it's not true, and we know that when you look into the sky, you see round planets, like you see the moon, you see the sun, you see the other planets are all round, so the earth would not be flat. So let's move on. That's something that I deliberately am starting this conversation with, something that we could agree upon. Now, I've discussed this with my brother briefly. We talked about the proof of aliens. Now, you'd say, what proof? What proof? Well, I'd say this. Look up a dictionary, the word proof, and it says overwhelming evidence of something. I think there's overwhelming evidence that the world is round. Do we all agree with that? It's overwhelming evidence. Now, let me give you the overwhelming evidence, I should say, that aliens exist. There are 3 strands of evidence. I describe them as that. The first is, and the most obvious, the multiple millions of sightings, some by highly qualified pilots, astronauts, and others really trained to observe and understand what they're seeing. There are multiple millions of these reports. Now, some people still put that aside. I know my mate John Edwards and others that I won't bother naming, put that aside and say, no, that's not enough. All right. There's a second strand. Sumerian history. Look it up on all these things. I'm going to put in some links later on onto this. Sumerian history. Now, you can go and see a map or a carving, let's say, of our solar system. Now, in that solar system, it has the sun and the planets going around the sun. They're all round planets, by the way. And the interesting thing is, there is Saturn, and the rings are around the planet. Now, thousands of years, let's say, before the invention of telescopes, which allowed us to see the rings of Saturn, the rings of Saturn were illustrated clearly on that carving map showing our solar system. So, thousands of years ago, somebody informed the Sumerians, proved to them, well, this is where you live, here's your solar system. Oh, by the way, there's that planet with the rings around it. Now, that to me is startling proof. But, you say there's more, but Sumerian history is too much to go into now. But look it up, and I hope to put in some links, as I say, on this to help people. And the main thing here, I believe, is research. When you research something, you'll find the truth of it. Now we move on quickly to a couple of things that are, well, let's say, marginal. There's some evidence of, but not enough to prove, and that's, the Loch Ness Monster. Talked about, nothing proven on that, but there's been few witnesses. Bigfoot's another classic example. Quite a lot of evidence around the place, including plaster casts of the foot imprints in the snow, all that sort of thing. But and there's not enough proof of that. But getting back to the aliens, that's the second strand of evidence. The third strand of evidence, and this brings it all together, is something called remote viewing. Now, if you haven't heard of it, look it up. I've got a book on the subject. It's basically related to and what we used to call ESP. Well, people sometimes scoff at all that, but there's been extremely detailed and major investigations, scientific investigations into remote viewing, and they've found that it's absolutely true. I'll give you a couple of quick examples before moving once again on to aliens. There was, now I have the names of these people. I've got a book on the subject and I won't worry about it now, but there was a head of, I think a chief of police in charge of one of the major police stations in San Francisco area, who had this remote viewing capability. Everyone has the capability, but it's latent in almost everybody, but it's there and it can be found. Anyway, he has this, and it was almost a hobby. It was almost a joke. What would happen? There'd be a robbery of a bank robbery in the area, and that guy, I can't think of his name, he'd think, or he'd not go into a trance, but he'd think, oh, gee, I can see the guy. I know where he is. He's down this alleyway running between A Street and B Street or something, And by the way, he's in there. Go down there and pick him up. Sure enough, police cars go down to either end of the alleyway, A Street and B Street. That's not the real street names, by the way, The officers run into the alley and find the guy hiding, quivering, let's say, behind a dumpster. They drag him out and he says, how did you know I was here? I say, well, we just know. Don't have to say any more. Under arrest. Now, then there was a famous case, Patty Hearst. As any of you older people would remember the name Patty Hearst. Well, what happened there was, she was the daughter of a billionaire, a newspaper tycoon, actually. And it doesn't matter which newspapers he owned. He owned quite a lot. He was like the Murdoch of his day. And captured. Well, this police chief could see. Go down to. Doesn't matter the name. Smith Street. In the valley down there, and by the way, it's a white van, it's down there. Of course, the police cars went racing down there, found the van, but not the occupants. Well, of course, they'd gone. But it was it's beyond guesswork that that van was found exactly as the police chief said. Now, he said a number of other things. Now, then there was another person who had this as I said, remote viewing capability into the tune. Let's say to use into use. Now, he was absolutely brilliant, and I can give you the names. I can put some of that down later on. He was asked to see with his mind where certain things were and people and so on, and he was fully tested. And one of the tests was they really had to. So this was going on in the 50s, let's say, and up into the 60s, for the military in the US to try and see certain things that the Russians were up to before you had spy satellites, and even perhaps before the U-2 plane and all the rest of it. Anyway, he could see different things in there, and they were proven to be completely correct. And now, one of the things was this is a test. It's called a double-blind test. There are envelopes which had the address where somebody was to be sent. They then handed the envelopes, they were sealed, to somebody else unrelated. In other words, come in, and these envelopes will be out there. And there's let's say there's 4 people. They're going to hide in these predetermined places. Then the other group of 4 people come into the room. Now they're not the ones, by the way. They're going to go with these people who are going to do the hiding. Take these envelopes. Wait until you've left the building. You've gone out into the streets. Open the envelope, and the person with you, you drive to that location and go into that building. It might be any kind of building. Could be an old warehouse. Wouldn't matter. And sure enough, 3 of them drove off, and they were heading towards where they were getting to their place. The 4th one wasn't there, getting to where they were going, I say. And this guy said, I'm getting a bit tired of this. I'm getting a bit sick and tired of this. The 4th one is not there, because the reason was, found out later on, the driver decided to drive all over the place, left, right, go all over the place to try and confuse the guy with the remote viewing. And the guy with the remote viewing said, well, look, I'm getting tired. How about we go for a cup of coffee, and I'll tell you what I'll do. Look, I can see where the guy's going, right? And it doesn't matter the address, right? He's going to. You'll find him at this warehouse, and this is some description of what you see in the warehouse. They say, oh, all right, that's a bit incredible, a bit crazy. Sure enough, they found the guy. Now then, when they said he said, oh look, I want something much more difficult than this. Somebody said, look, NASA's going to send a spaceship up to Jupiter, and it's going to take about a couple of years, to get out to Jupiter, and we're going to photograph it, and hopefully and send the photos back and all that. But look, what can you see on Jupiter? This is really, some people would say it's ridiculous. But anyway, he had a big cigar, and he sat up back on his chair. He says, I can see rings around Jupiter. Right? I said, don't you mean Saturn? No, he said, I've been doing this for 50 years. I can tell you that Jupiter has these rings. Well, he sort of, okay. Sure enough, the spacecraft got to Jupiter and found the rings, which were ice rings in orbit, photographed all of that, and sent the photos back to Earth. And of course, that person was vindicated by that statement. I saw all of that. Now, you're hanging out to hear, well, what's that got to do with aliens? Well, I'd say it has a lot to do with them. Because there are other, see, the US military, I'm not sure which branch or I think the CIA and NSA, anyway, they were interested in these things. Oh, extremely interested in all this, to prove all this or otherwise. And they had people tested, as I was talking about. Now, one of them, they said, well, we'll soon fix this up. We'll give you a coordinates. So many degrees north, so many degrees west and so east. Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And they already knew what was there, basically. You know. Oh, I'm over Russia. Oh, I'm over a forest that's outside of Moscow. Oh, I'm going into a house. And in this house is a grand piano in the corner, and it's got a world globe on the desk, and it's got this and it's got that. And it's got a variety of things in there that are very interesting. I said, oh yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And they knew that that was Khrushchev's country home outside of Moscow. All right, we'll give you another coordinate. And that was off the coast of Newfoundland, I think Canada, up in that particular region. They already suspected and they believed that the Russians had submarines running up in that area. So he said, I can see a submarine. And he says, and it's not one of ours. And they go, okay. Oh, and it's been obscured. He said, there's something over the top of the submarine. It's like a disc-shaped object is seemingly obscuring this submarine. It's above it. It's in the water, but it's above the submarine. I can't quite make out everything there. They just scoffed and laughed and, oh, you mean like a UFO? He said, yeah, like a UFO. Oh, it zooms away. Oh, now I can see the submarine. Here it is. And he describes the rest of it. They say, okay. They're noting all this, by the way. I think it's all been recorded. I understand it was actually filmed, or it was definitely recorded. So they gave him another coordinate, knowing, as I said, the basic location. So he said, oh, I'm flying, as I say, in his mind. He sent his mind, you know. I'm over a huge desert. And it's red and there's mountains. And I'm coming into the coordinate and I can see white domes all around this area. And wait a minute, I can see under the ground. I'm going even further in under the ground, and there's tunnels, and there's aliens walking around. Of course, there are a number of people. There would be several people in the room if this was going on. Like, what? What are you talking about? This is ridiculous. You know? Well, no, that's what I can see. And I said, all right, okay, all right. That location was Pine Gap in the Northern Territory, not Central Australia, near Alice Springs, by the way. And I understand, a friend of mine, John Macaroni, said you can actually see the white domes from the train at a distance south of Alice Springs. That's incidentally, and if you're travelling on the GAN, you can see that. It's never been proven. They've never gone, and they can't get into the base, and you can't demand to find the entrances to these tunnels and everything else and reveal everything. You just can't do it. Now, some people right now would be saying, oh, that's all crazy, don't be so stupid, that's all science fiction, that's fantasy, that's just rubbish. But wait a minute. I will put in the links, you can make your mind up yourself. I'm just saying all along here, research. Now, I've got other friends who scoff at the existence of God. Now you might think, what's that got to do with aliens? Well, I'll get on to that. I accept this God, and I accept Jesus as Lord and Saviour. You say, oh yeah, another Christian. Oh well, a fundamentalist. No, I'm not a fundamentalist in that sense. I accept the Bible, I accept Jesus, I accept the God. Now, here's where we come, and I'll try and be brief on this because it'll go on forever otherwise. Some fundamentalists, or might I say most, think and they have a very, very narrow mindset, let's say, a very narrow mindset. They think there's God, there's heaven, there's angels, there's earth, and it's life on earth, and it's just man. In other words, a man interacts with God and or Jesus, and etc. And the universe is empty. Now, I've discussed this even with one of our pastors at church, a very good bloke and top guy. And I said, yeah, surely you don't accept that the universe is empty. He said, yeah, I do. I thought, wow, oh, ouch, you know, I mean, I'm not going to take that discussion any further right now. I think, because I've done a lot of research, it's not just YouTube, of course, there's been quite a number of books and everything else on the subjects that bring it all together for me. I believe that God has created thousands, if not a million, planets in his universe that have intelligent life on them. And I think that, that there's quite a number of people have seen so many aliens in situations that like it is very, very clear that that's true, and there are many books and other things that'll bring it together for you, and I'm not going to go long-winded into all of that, but I just give you some links later. And before you dismiss aliens, and before any one of you dismisses God or anything like that, look at the things that I'm going to include later and make your own mind up. These are the things, and I've given you the 3 strands, as I said, with the evidence on the aliens. These are the things that if you look at each of the strands, it brings it all together and creates overwhelming evidence. In other words, proof. So I'd like to hear from you only after you've seen this video and after you perhaps have a look at the links that I provide as soon as I can. Probably mostly today, but heading off to church as it turns out very shortly. So I'm leaving you with it, and I'm sending it to some of the people who I believe would be interested in this, and as I said, one of my friends has told me not to do it, so I won't send it to him. But there are a couple of other people that would be interested, and I'll leave you with it, so thank you for viewing.